Hi, this is Reggie with R&B Talks with special guest Jim Perry.
Indiana Jim.
Indiana Jim.
Yeah. Use my internet name. Not everybody has an internet name.
Everybody knows. Well, everybody knows my name by now, but that's Indiana Jim.
That's it.
What does Indiana have to do with it?
What does Indiana have to do with it? I live here. So I'll tell you the story. I'll tell you how it started. So there was a podcast back in the day called Slice of Sci-Fi. Started by two guys in Phoenix. They had a local radio show called The Dragon Page, and they interviewed sci-fi fantasy authors and talked sci-fi and stuff. So they started doing a podcast that was trying to save Enterprise when they were going to cancel it. And so starting kind of a fan campaign, and they started this podcast. Well, it grew into a kind of a weekly sci-fi news show. And then they had like the unscripted show where everybody gets together and drinks and they just talk about whatever, called Winging It. And they would take voicemails, and a lot of the listeners would call in with their own kind of bits over voicemail. So instead of this is Jim in Indiana, it's Indiana Jim, because Indiana Jones, it just kind of rolls off. It's the nerdy thing.
I like it.
I'm big into Star Wars and Indiana Jones. I had a guy, actually a friend of mine, made some artwork where he took a picture of me and like the Raiders of the Lost Ark thing and kind of made my face kind of in the cartoon. So
I've seen it.
You've seen that profile picture?
Yes, I have seen it. Yeah,
so it was kind of, and the whip was a microphone, with a mic cable. So the Indiana Jim, that's my podcaster name.
Dude, that's awesome. So man, I met you a long time ago. While I was, I guess you call it slumming it at the old Best Buy.
Yeah, it was like 2005, I think.
Yeah, man.
It's 20 years.
We're old men now, bro. We are.
Speak for yourself.
I don't really feel that old, man. But I try to take care of myself. So there's that anymore. Now I think you can, but so like really, dude, we were nerds and are nerds. I should say that we are definitely, I'm still technically a geek and a nerd about all kinds of things, but I think if you look at your Star Wars Survival Guide channel, like, dude, you get into some Star Wars, man. That's wicked. That's wicked nerdism, man. It's pretty cool. So explain to me a little bit about obviously you're a Star Wars fan, but what made you go the whole Star Wars Survival Guide kind of thing? So
it started because I was, I'm a big gamer too. And of course any Star Wars video game I'll play. And I was big into Star Wars Battlefront, back in 04 and 05, on the PS2. And kind of that was one of the earliest like online games you can get on, play against anybody. Well, they came out with the newer games. There were other channels that were making class guides and hero guide, how to use each character, and that kind of thing. And I was like, that looks fun. I want to get in on that. And just started getting into it and learning the YouTube game, learning how to make thumbnails, learning how to do appropriate like SEO stuff and tags and all that. And just learning how to make content, learning by example from the other channels and kind of venturing my own way. And but as soon as I started to get some traction, and like some of my class guides have over 10,000 views, a lot of good feedback from folks that like them. But basically like as soon as I got the pipeline going, that's when Electronic Arts decided we're done working on this game. And when they moved into developing Battlefront or Battlefield 2042, they ended, active support on that game, Battlefront 2, but it's still going. There's people still in those lobbies even now, however many years later it's been. But anyway, that's how it started. And I always kind of wanted to get more into like Star Wars essay content and stuff like that. But I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to do it. I'm just doing it just for something fun to do, and I'm not looking to try to really go anywhere with it, because the very nature of it is it's someone else's IP. So there's only so much you can bank off of that cachet.
That's true.
So YouTube, I don't know if you've noticed, but takes a lot of work to really, careful, to really like get anything going. And you spend so much time editing and like, especially the recent essay videos. Like I had so many clips and stuff.
That one you did, the A-Team.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, that must have taken, that must have taken quite a bit.
It really wasn't too bad. That one, I kind of knew what I was going for, you know? And again, you can use OBS to just capture YouTube video. I say again, like I said it once before already while we were recording, but I didn't. You can use OBS to record your screen. And so I would think, okay, what clip do I want for this? Oh, I want this shot. So I go look at the Andor trailer. Okay, season 1 trailer. Let me just record that and I'll pick pieces out of that. Or I think a specific scene. I need something from Narkina 5, the prison sequence. So I go find that and get that clip.
Yeah.
And some of it just kind of revealed itself to me. Like at the beginning of the A-Team intro, you have a Jeep that there's a blow up and it flies up in the air. And then conversely, there's the Andor shot where that thing blows up and flies up in the air. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. So that, you know, it depends on the project. That one didn't take nearly as long to do just because it's so short. But like the Force Awakens one, like I had clips from The Force Awakens, but every clip would trigger the YouTube copyright block. Only that movie, not the Last Jedi clips, not Rise of Skywalker clips, just The Force Awakens. So I had to use still images. I had to go back and edit it like 2 different times to try to figure out what would work. But all that to say, I'm not sure how much I want to put into it just because of the time investment involved. And there's so many other things that I like doing. So,
well, I mean, you do far more than what we do here for sure. Like, you know, you mentioned thumbnails are a great example. Like, it's like, I mean, I don't have time to go through and take like make a creative thumbnail for, even though that's what you're supposed to do. You know, I tag my videos, but at the same token, I haven't gone and taken the time to like do market research into like what this, you know. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, man. So on that subject, because this the one video I did watch more than once was the Force Awakens video that you just recently put out. Like we're talking, this wasn't but like, what did it say, 11 days ago or something? Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Here's what I want to say. You are absolutely on point with Force Awakens. And like your jab at the whole Force Awakens versus The New Hope was like, I was like, that's, when I watched it, it was a letdown because it was like, you're just telling the same damn story, except you're just making it new, except without as good of character development. You know, and I think one of your points, and if you want to piggyback off this a little bit, was the protagonist. I think that's a key. Tell me about what your opinions are about how the protagonist was developed and curated throughout the Force Awakens.
Okay, so the number one problem with that is who's the protagonist. And when every Star Wars movie I've ever seen, when I first see it, I love it. And then later on, my opinion changes or grows or whatever. And with The Force Awakens, like, it's still a fun movie. Like, J.J. Abrams knows how to make a fun movie.
Yeah, for sure.
But he's not very good as a writer. Like, he's okay visually. Like, he's good at making it exciting and compelling. But at the end of the day, it's bland and lifeless. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of motion. There's a lot of lens flares. There's a lot of stuff coming at you. But in the end, it doesn't really mean much. And so with the protagonists, it was, you know, they brought Lawrence Kasdan on board. He said, as long as I get to write for Han Solo and my son and I can make this Han Solo movie, right? That was his deal. He wanted to write for Han Solo. And so you can tell that, like I said in the video, the one character who has an identifiable story arc that moves from one place to another, that has a clear goal to pursue, is Han Solo. You know, he's the one that moves from not accepting his responsibilities to pursuing his son, having something to go after. And so you can tell that's where Kasdan's influence is Han Solo. And so Han Solo is the protagonist of his own arc, but he doesn't accept with the call to adventure. He doesn't accept his goal until they're on the base and Leia says, he says, okay, we're going to go get that shield down. Leia says, bring back our son. It's like, okay, I'm going to, it takes a while to get there. And so that's problem number one is you have a protagonist in Han Solo, whether you wanted him to be or not, whether they intended for him to be or not. He's essentially supposed to be a subplot character. The problem with, Poe, as I said in the video, that first scene with Poe kind of established this thing the way Star Wars established with Leia. It's like, here's the MacGuffin, here's the bad guy, you got to take this, run away, take this to, and he doesn't even say, like Star Wars, it's find Obi-Wan Kenobi, give him the message, have him take you to the base. Let's, find Obi-Wan Kenobi, do the thing. In this thing, it's just like, run away and I'll come find you. It's not really a goal. It's not really there's no mission there. It's kind of why Leia passes over Tatooine, because she knows she's being pursued by the Empire. Poe gets caught by surprise. Oh, the First Order's here. Well, how did they find us? Nobody knows. You knew why Darth Vader found Princess Leia. He was following her, and we saw in Rogue One how they kind of realized that, sort of. But in the crawl, it says, pursued by the Empire's sinister agents, Leia is, trying to get to Alderaan. And so, Poe, is he the protagonist? Oh, no. He doesn't have a goal. It's just kind of get away, but he doesn't. He gets captured, right? That sets the stakes. It says, okay, Kylo Ren says, I know you have the map to find Luke Skywalker. Okay, which brings up its own question is, if you don't want to be found, why is there a map? But that's kind of beside the point.
Good point, though.
Right? And then Finn. Finn, as I stated in the video, that's a great introduction if he is the protagonist. If the Force awakens in him and it awakens his conscience and he wants to save Poe and get away from the First Order. But again, his goal is just to get away from the First Order. And then it's, save Rey. I got to save Rey. I got to save Rey. I'm going to yell Rey. That's my primary line 37 times in the trilogy.
Yeah.
And so he stops being a protagonist because ostensibly the protagonist is supposed to be the orphan kid on the desert planet, which is fine. If you're going to go there, go there. Let's do that. Let's give her a purpose. Let's give her a goal. Let's give her something she wants. But all she wants is to stay there.
Yes.
She doesn't, she gets dragged along. It's like, oh, I found this droid. Well, I'm going to go into town. The droid's just with me. She speaks droid, but the droid doesn't say, hey, I got this thing. I got to get, he's waiting for Poe. Again, he has nothing to do except wait for Poe. But then, the First Order shows up. Now we got to run. Now we're running. We're running away. And it's like they move from crisis to crisis, but they don't really have a set goal that gets the primary protagonist from one place to another.
Do you feel like that problem with the protagonist, though, do you feel like that goes all throughout that whole trilogy? Or do you feel like Rey eventually does become and get that real clear an indication of a goal and a journey kind of thing?
Not really, because her goal becomes go find Luke Skywalker, bring him back.
Right.
Or get the training, and she essentially kind of gives up on it.
Yeah.
Because she's got to go. Now we've made, Rian Johnson, which, by the way, I feel like there's a lot of really good things that Rian Johnson aimed for that he didn't quite hit. But one of the best things he did was with Kylo Ren. And even in The Force Awakens, by the end of the movie, he's become the most interesting character because
Correct.
He's the one with the most compelling conflict, internal conflict going on. He doesn't really have a goal, but you want to know what's going on inside his head because we have that emotional context with Han Solo, who we've identified with from years and years. And so there is no emotional connection with any of the other protagonists, which sucks to even say that because there should only be one. It's George Lucas is the one who established the storytelling language, which is the hero's journey in a myth type arc.
Sci-fi fantasy type of thing.
But he's specifically going for that hero's journey, circular kind of thing.
Using space magic, let's roll.
And the beautiful thing about what George Lucas did is that not only does Star Wars follow that arc, hero's journey arc perfectly, but the 3 movies follow that hero's journey arc perfectly. And not only that, the prequel movies follow that arc almost perfectly. Phantom Menace is difficult to say it follows it perfectly because you're not sure who the hero of that is. Like the protagonist is Qui-Gon Jinn, but he dies at the end, so it's a tragedy, which is what George is going for. Attack of the Clones, begun the Clone Wars we have this tragedy. Revenge of the Sith, Anakin becomes Darth Vader, we have a tragedy. But again, it's following that tragic circle. Mm-hmm. When you take Darth Vader's or Anakin's arc from Episode 1 to Return of the Jedi, it follows it's all these concentric circles because George Lucas knew what he was aiming for.
Right.
And so they don't do anything like that with the next 3 movies because it hasn't been planned out. It hasn't been thought through. It's let's make a whiz-bang Star Wars movie. And then, so J.J. Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan said at the beginning of the outset of the process said, let's make a movie that delights us about Star Wars. What delights us about Star Wars? And everything in it is either Star Wars or The Empire Strikes Back. It's, ooh, here's a piece, here's a piece, here's a piece, here's a piece, here's a piece. Isn't this fun? Right? There's no story to that, right? It's just an exhibition of stuff we love about Star Wars. And then Rian Johnson said, I'm going to make an exhibition of all the things that influenced George Lucas to make Star Wars instead of using Star Wars as the basis. And that's where the trouble all starts. It starts in the foundation because there was no plan to go, well, how did George do it? What was the overarching? It wasn't like that. They went modern Hollywood with it because George wasn't in the room, and it's a different storytelling approach, and not everybody does it the way George did. But
yeah, I mean, I think you hit it where like it's, in other words, The Force Awakens is filmed well, looks cool. Mm-hmm. It's got a lot of effects that are cool, so you're drawn to that, but it doesn't suck you in to the story. Really, you don't find characters that you're really latching on to. I didn't, or anything except for Kylo Ren. Mm-hmm. It's the only one you're kind of sitting there wondering what's going to happen with that cat.
And they're capitalizing on how you felt about Star Wars because that was their approach. Yeah. What do we love about Star Wars? Let's put that in there, and that attracts the viewer to go, oh, this is so much better than what George Lucas did because the prequels sucked and they were boring and the actors didn't care. And entirely missing George Lucas's storytelling approach. And it's.
Well, okay. So let me say this. Like when I can't remember the last time I saw the New Hope, mm-hmm. but like when you go back to watch that now, right? It doesn't matter how much, but it's much slower pace for one than what they make any modern movie anymore. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more time spent on development if you see that in that movie, particularly with Star Wars. And The Phantom Menace, I don't think was too far away from that sort of, like you're saying.
Very similarly paced, especially as it takes its time at the beginning and then ramps up later.
But I feel like, honestly, Jim, like that's like, I think that's a thing because like we just got dumber, dude, as a human beings that we have in the movie thing. You know what I mean? Because movies are dumber now, man. They're not near like if you go back and watch like old comedy movies like The Apartment or something stupid.
Right.
It has so much more substance in it than Fast and Furious 10. I mean, come on, man. I mean, this is ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. And not that storytelling, because I think this, and we'll get to storytelling in a minute because I think it reveals a lot about your perspective, and because how you write indicates how you think about the movies, I believe. So we'll get to that. But in particular, though, was because I still think on Star Wars, though, what's always been the thing about because it was an interesting thing. What's your opinion about where George Lucas really got the idea of like the Force and like swashbuckling type of thing? Because there's, if this is like a topic, if you go online and talk to Star Wars things, this is like a debated thing about, where these influence. So what's your opinion about the influence to where the Force kind of came, that idea was influenced by and stuff like that?
So there's a lot of good resources about this. In particular, there's a really good video that goes way in depth into all the mythic underpinnings, the philosophical underpinnings, and the scientific underpinnings, like specifically regarding, where does George get this whole midichlorian thing? Like the midichlorians were in George's materials back as far as 1976. And a lot of people, I could do a whole thing about midichlorians, which would, I don't need to do that. I don't need to get into that. But I was going to do a video called Everything You Know About Midichlorians is Wrong. But there's two really great videos out there, a shorter one and a longer one that already knock it out of the park. So I don't even need to go into it. But there's a guy that did a whole presentation, like really gets into here's how mitochondria help the cells and what they do and all that, whatever. What was the question? Okay, so I remember now. Brian J. Jones did a really great biography of George Lucas and talks about kind of where he got these ideas. So he had a couple different things going on. One is, I want to make a movie that harkens back to the old 30s serials, Flash Gordon. He tried to get the rights for Flash Gordon, but he couldn't acquire them. He was like, let me make my own. And then, knowing he's going to do that, he was also really into anthropology and understanding how myths came to be, how cultures acquired the various myths that they did. So he's like, and he was raised Methodist. Okay, that's kind of, not his parents weren't really active in church, but that's his background. And so, having gone to film school in LA, he was, really interested in philosophy and anthropology. So he had all the world religions and stuff in his head as he's thinking through this. And he said, if I really want to reach an audience, like I'm also interested in myths. So I'm going to use that structure, Joseph Campbell, the whole hero's journey thing, Hero with 1,000 Faces. How do I apply that to the story for it to really resonate? Because these are the stories that really resonate across culture. And so he was very intentional on what works for audiences worldwide, regardless. And this is what I'm going to apply to the storytelling. And he developed this big old long thing. Dark Horse came out with a comic series called The Star Wars, which is based on his first original treatment, which goes in like really wild places. But his initial concept, The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, and it was like from the Journal of the Wills. And his conceit was, R2-D2 is the one carrying this message. He's the one telling the story. He's the observer of all of these things. He's the one telling the story to whoever these wills are. And the wills were these microscopic beings that are part of the Force, and the whole weird kind of nonsensical kind of oddball stuff. But he kind of tabled that and said, okay, let's get to the core of this. What's the core of the story? So, I mean, like a lot of that microbiotic stuff was stuff he was thinking about. He's like, the Force is an energy field. It's created by all of life. Life creates this energy. Well, the Force, that's how we tap into this energy of life. Well, if life creates it, it's biological. The building blocks are biological. If the Force can run strong in your family, that means there's a reason it runs strong in your family. And it wasn't that the Force was originally mystical and suddenly it's scientific. It's this ability to communicate with the universe. This kind of the universalist idea. Is that everything's connected, and everything is in symbionce with everything else. So it's the circle of life.
Did you ever see? Hey, look, storms. Did you ever see the Chris Langan and his theory of the reality as we know it? CTMU.
Not familiar with it. No.
Okay, if you want to look at that, because when I was not just when I was listening to like when you were talking about Star Wars in particular, or even just now. But the theory, like the overall theory of reality, there's like many different philosophers and physicists and quantum guys who've been trying to figure out a unified theory of reality, right? Mm-hmm. And so Chris Langan is a guy who supposedly has like, an IQ of 200 something, right? He's one of those kind of guys. And
sure.
he's developed his own cognitive theory of the universe. But it made me think of that when you're talking about it, because part of his, it's this whole thing about the universe and how, well, we don't have to, I guess it just made me think of it. That's probably the best thing to say. So when I look at, and one of the things that Brian actually, this is why I was asking you this question. One of the things that was, Brian actually wanted me to ask you is like, what is the existential parallel between the light and dark side of the Force? And what similarities does it share with a mainstream religion like Christianity?
Okay, so comparing the Force to God, essentially?
Yeah, kind of something like that. And just in your opinion, this is obviously, this is a very esoteric.
No, and again, there's another great video of George talking to a bunch of people at Lucasfilm, kind of explaining how the Force works and the dark side especially. And it's the dark side is essentially selfishness. It's essentially gratifying the flesh, as we would put it in Christian terms.
Yeah.
And the more you gratify the flesh, the more the flesh desires, the more you want to gratify it, then this vicious cycle. And that's where anger comes from. It's I'm angry because I'm entitled, right? I've decided I'm angry about this, or I've decided this is something I'm supposed to be angry about. Anger, fear, hate, these kinds of things. Obviously, those would not qualify as what we would call fruit of the Spirit.
Correct.
Right. And so, and it's not, we would almost put it in terms of like, there's God good, devil bad, right? It's like, there's a side the God's on, there's a side the devil. We would polarize that, but really it's about us. It's about our own selfish desire. It's about the flesh. And we don't need to be tempted because the devil decides to tempt us. We are all dragged away and enticed by our own desires, right? So, I think there's obviously elements of Christianity and sort of that, what we might call a biblical worldview. Part of that is in George's foundational thinking.
Being raised Methodist, I'm sure that plays part of it.
In the sense that George was looking at it was kind of how do I sort of coalesce it all together into a sort of a foundational belief that can kind of connect across the spectrum.
Yeah, whatever your religion is, you can recognize it. Yeah,
and so and that's the power of resonance, right? That resonates with us on a certain level. We can go, oh my gosh, we can find so many Christian concepts in Star Wars, but there's also the woo-woo stuff,
Well, and I think this is, I think the whole Star Wars trilogy, well, not trilogy, but the whole Star Wars arc, as we have it today, the villains do a great job of illustrating the aspects that we would identify with as of the flesh or that thing. I mean, that's the consistent, even Snoke and
Snoke.
Well, I said Stoke, didn't I? I meant Snoke.
I made Snoke.
But I think that's another point where I think Rey doesn't fulfill that whole ideal of the light side very well either. I think there's a lot of straying and this fear and that and this that stuff that comes across a little, right? Or maybe you think differently, but
it's drawn on Empire Strikes Back, on Luke's struggle. Yeah, Empire Strikes Back. The whole pit thing in The Last Jedi was sort of reflective of the cave on Dagobah, kind of this nexus of the dark side. And Luke, even in The Last Jedi, gets the whole idea of balance wrong. Between, equal dark, equal light means balance. And that's not what George, in that video that I mentioned, he says, the dark side is imbalance.
Right.
Because, being in balance doesn't mean you're in between the two spectrums. Being balanced means you've eliminated self-interest. You've eliminated selfish desires. You've reached a balance in that you don't need anything. You're content. You are, and you want to call it nirvana, enlightenment, or whatever. Yeah. It's, and so the idea that Johnson was trying to present, I think, was that Luke kind of comes around to, saying at the end, I'm not going to be the last Jedi. The Jedi do need to continue, and they're going to continue in the character of Rey. But Rey, as a protagonist, suffers because she's never really challenged. Now she is tempted to think a certain way by Kylo Ren. And that, to me, is one of the better parts of The Last Jedi. That character journey that she goes on with Kylo, if they really kind of lean into it more and really kind of focused, I don't know, but
I know what you're saying.
Really made Luke more active in the sense of trying to draw her away. She kind of comes away from the dark side temptation just because she's good. There's no, she believes Kylo's going to turn to the good side, and then, she goes in and she's challenging Snoke and she's resisting Snoke, and then they fight the red guys, and she never really, Luke says something about, you went straight to the dark. You didn't even think about it. But it's like, did she? She fell into the pit. She fell off the rock. It's like, they don't do a good job with it. There is no, Luke doesn't go to the point where he's like, oh gosh, I'm afraid for my friends. I need to go help them. And I'm going to, Rey kind of does that because she thinks, I can turn Kylo Ren. Well, this is not going to go the way you think. Because Luke knows it's not going to go. It didn't go the way he thought it was going to go. And so they kind of lean into that a little bit in the second movie, but they don't get to the point where she's at the end of her rope like Luke was in The Empire Strikes Back. And in the pit of despair.
So, yeah, I mean, I think Star Wars is, look, I've been a huge fan of this. So when for me, why I'm even entertaining this whole conversation, honestly, is just because that the Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and the Last Skywalker, is that
The Rise of Skywalker?
Rise of Skywalker,
yeah,
were such a disappointment. That I was just like, I was so mad, right? How could you take this epic, because you got to understand that was what 77 was when The New Hope came out, right? I was just a baby at that point, but but I did actually go see The Empire Strikes Back. I don't remember that, but my mom and dad went to go see that at the theater when I was 3 or whatever years old or whatever it was. So, I mean, to me, this has always been my first science fiction thing.
Right.
And I would watch Star Wars all over and over again. So for me, it was for that generation.
It's our cultural touchstone.
Yeah. And I think,
and that's the power of myth at work right there.
Well, I know this is probably a faux pas, but compare that with the other Star Trek reboot movies, especially Into the Darkness. Was fantastic, dude. It was just a great movie. I thought I enjoyed that quite a bit, even though they turned it around a little bit because of the alternate time, which, yeah, ad nauseum about the alternate timeline crap. I get it.
And I don't mind that so much. It's oh, look, they did the thing. They did the con thing.
They did the con thing.
And it's he's in the jail cell, or he's in the brig. He's like, my name is Khan. And Kirk's like, so?
Yeah.
It completely falls flat.
Yeah.
And it turns it into a joke. It turns it into an in-joke reference. Oh, he said Khan.
That was the thing, because Khan was introduced in the original series.
Right.
And he was an epic bad guy, right? I mean, so then you come out and it's like that scene in particular, I couldn't have said that better. It is. And you're like, how did that, it's just lost. Because,
and this is kind of the biggest weakness of the Star Wars sequels is its own metatextuality.
Yeah.
Is its constant comment on itself.
Yeah.
And so with JJ and with Star Trek, it's even worse. It's even more of an in reference. It's even more of a referring in on itself instead of telling a story. You're constantly in reference mode.
But I think the difference between the Star Trek one and the Star Wars one is that the Star Trek has the character development is better, right? I think you can, like, Kirk is there. You identify with Kirk. Kirk's not it's not like Ray is like in Ray, you're kind of confused at the protagonist role, but then in Star Trek, it's freaking Kirk.
No, because sometimes it's Spock. Because when you go into
I guess you're right.
When they get to Spock, it's like, oh, he's on this journey of trying to prove himself, right?
Yeah,
it's like at the end of the Vulcan Academy, live long and prosper.
Oh yeah,
it's like
the spite.
They're totally turning Spock into it. They're completely betraying the character that we know. And again, they're using these events that happen in the Kelvin timeline, these new events, to sort of change how the characters respond, which is fine. If you're going to do that, Kirk. The original Kirk is not like the Kirk we see in this Star Trek.
That's true. Very true.
Except they still want to get to the Kobayashi Maru. They still want to get to the same place and have him do the same thing, but for different reasons. And it's just like, it doesn't, they turn him into kind of this sarcastic, don't want to take orders, and again, he's not able to follow in the footsteps of his dad, and his dad's absent, and his mom remarried. And I get that. You're changing, but you're changing entirely who Kirk is.
Well, and comparing that to like Wrath of Khan, right? Nothing to me is going to be Wrath of Khan,
right? But the establishment that you're talking about, the establishment of the character motivations,
yes,
is interesting, and it is well done up to a point. And it's like, so Kirk goes into Starfleet just because Pike says, "I dare you to do better."
Yeah, where's that coming from?
I mean,
where's the depth of that? I guess.
It's kind of flippant.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know.
I didn't like Beyond the whatever that last. I didn't like that one too much.
Well, that was the first of the new Trek that actually was doing its own thing, that wasn't reliant on the past.
It was. Let me say this. I guess it was interesting, and it was like a movie I watch, and I have watched a couple of times. It just wasn't it wasn't like the old, Star Trek 2 kind of thing. That's where I was at with it. But not that I think it's a bad movie. Don't get me wrong. We're being hypercritical here.
Well, and Star Trek has always gone kind of far afield from itself. It's kind of like, okay, you didn't really like the new Trek. Well, that's fine. It's not trying to build on the story that came before. It's its own thing. But you can go watch the original trilogy and enjoy it. You can go watch the original trilogy films and enjoy them. Next Generation, Voyager, whatever. When you come into J.J. Abrams' Trek, they're doing a completely different thing. And that's kind of why, they're not doing a sequential story like the Star Wars sequels. We're building on what came before.
What do you think, though? I mean, like, so I did, when I went back and I was watching some of your stuff, the kind of like offshoots of the Star Wars things, right? Is there any of those you like more than others? Let's take, for instance, Andor. That's generally speaking, it's the one people kind of lean to and say, oh yeah, it's actually good.
Yeah. But when I knew Tony Gilroy was doing Andor, that's what made me excited about it. It had nothing to do with, I want to see what Cassian Andor, I want to see what Cassian was like. I want to see how he came. That didn't even matter to me. The fact that somebody who was a competent writer was coming in to do a Star Wars story. And, he kind of caught some flack for some comments that he made. He was in an interview. They asked him about Rogue One, and he said the film was in terrible trouble. They asked me to come on board. There was no core to the story here. So Tony Gilroy is the one who came in and gave the characters, rounded out the characters. That was kind of his deal. So in Rogue One, he's the one that kind of gave that emotional core to what Jyn Erso was doing, because before that it was just kind of a by the numbers, embedded documentary style military film. That's what Gareth Edwards was going for. And Edwards even talked about how there was so much that they had done that there was not a core idea to the film. So he had to get in the editing room and really kind of find the core of the story. And so Gilroy was kind of the second unit director. He came in and added stuff to the screenplay, kind of rounded it out, gave it some heart, went out and shot these reshoots while Edwards was in the editing room. And so when I knew Tony Gilroy was coming on board to do Andor, I was like, I know this guy knows how to write a screenplay. He knows how to establish characters. He understands dialogue. Like he did the Bourne Identity, all the way up to Ultimatum, but he kind of left the project on Ultimatum when they decided to go kind of in a different direction.
Which was weird.
Well, and I love the Bourne all of them. I love all the Bourne movies.
Oh yeah.
I don't care, the Jason Bourne, the Bourne Legacy with what's his name, Hawkeye,
Okay, well what about
but
go ahead.
But anyway, Andor, I wasn't so much interested in seeing how it kind of built out the Star Wars universe. That's kind of been a side benefit. That's really been a bonus, is that it's so good. We get to see so much more of Mon Mothma and these other characters and the sacrifices they're making and the compromises that the Imperial characters are willing to make to achieve their goals. It's been a riveting drama. And that's what I like, is like, I like seeing a different angle of the Star Wars universe. Who are the regular people that are fighting for freedom here? Not just the Skywalkers, you know. Skeleton Crew, I thought was wonderful because it wasn't metatextual. It wasn't trying to comment on the Star Wars universe. It was just these characters in the universe, an occasional reference to something you've heard of, but not for the nostalgia points. It all fit the story, and the story was focused on the kids and what the kids were doing, their goals. They were trying to get back home, the whole planet thing, and then the whole Jude Law pirate guy. Like, it was a self-contained story, really well done by, Ford and Watts, the Spider-Man guys. And so I think that addresses what you were saying.
Okay, so I liked the Solo movie, even though it was just fun.
Yeah.
I thought it was a fun movie.
Exactly, yeah.
And Solo wasn't so weird off character than what you'd expect. So it was like...
Lando had a...
Lando was
the whole pansexual business.
Yeah, that's not cool at all. But again,
it's like it wasn't necessary.
No,
it served no purpose in the film other
none whatsoever.
than to check off your woke points.
Yeah, yeah.
But I thought Phoebe Waller-Bridge playing the droid, fighting for droid rights. I thought that was hilarious.
That was fun. That was funny. I liked The Bad Batch. You mentioned The Bad Batch as well. I haven't actually watched very much of it, though, to be honest. It was just like maybe first season.
Yeah.
I think is all I've watched. But it was really, really cool and like a really good story.
It's kind of a continuation of the Clone Wars cartoon.
Yeah. And the Clone Wars cartoon was was actually really cool. I actually liked that one well. But like, it just seems like okay, in The Mandalorian. So here's my... I like the Mandalorian, dude. I love the concept of the Mandalorian, how they have his character and stuff. But I've never really liked this Grogu. I just thought that was kind of silly to be having like, Baby Yoda running around. I just thought that was weird, and like it didn't. You have to have something in there to draw it into that whole Force element. I'm assuming, and that's kind of how they're doing it, but. I don't know. What's your take? You may think this is totally not cool either, but like, I just didn't. It's there now, so you can't really do anything. But
well, two things, maybe several things. I don't know.
Let it rip.
The initial concept of this Mandalorian bounty hunter on the fringes of the New Republic, doing his bounty hunter thing. Is only interesting for like a minute, I think had they sort of gone with the reluctant vigilante angle, a la the Incredible Hulk TV show, where we jump into a place, I'm just trying to take a job, something happens that pricks my conscience, I got to help these people, let me help these people, and let me get out of here and go find another job. I think that's interesting only for a while, because that kind of show eventually jumps the shark. A-Team. It's like you can only go so far with that concept before you start running out of really good ideas.
Yeah.
The addition of Grogu instantly makes it compelling. Like, holy crap, there's an infant Yoda. We've never seen any Yodas in here. Them kind of taking off that in the sense that we're trying to clone Force-sensitive things. And it's like the way that plays into the resurrected Palpatine, which I don't mind that idea. I liked it in, Dark Empire, the comic, way back when. But again, the execution is the problem. The Bad Batch they use Omega to kind of set up, we're trying to clone. It's the whole cloning thing. George established the cloning thing, so that's, it's fine if you want to go there. Then they tried to do the Vigilante of the Week with Grogu.
I think you're right.
The addition of Grogu has sort of caused the Mandalorian to sort of run off its track. And, just by season 3, it was fizzling. Because now it's like, well, is this Grogu's story? Is this Din Djarin's story? Is this Bo-Katan's story? Who is the Mandalorian? I did a piece on my Substack called "Will the Real Mandalorian Please Stand Up?" It's like we're losing again the protagonist here. Book of Boba Fett I thought was really interesting until they just decided he's like this Ubermensch.
Yeah.
And it's like
super weird.
And then let's take, and we sort of understood it kind of was like Mandalorian season 2.5 or whatever. But then like they leave Boba Fett completely.
Gone.
To talk about Luke and Grogu and Ahsoka. Oh, look, we put them together. Oh, they mentioned Anakin. They did the thing. They said the thing. Clone Wars, And then we come back and like Grogu's entire Jedi journey is over in an episode. What was all the buildup for? What was all the, So I'm with you. Like, I really enjoy The Mandalorian. I enjoy a lot of aspects of it. And it's a fun show still. And when Grogu has to take the ship and go find Bo-Katan because he's got to save his adopted dad, that's good story. I like that. There's emotional weight there. But now you're left with, well, what happens to Grogu down the road?
Okay.
He's obviously not killed in Luke's academy by Kylo Ren.
Right. Like where does that all play out?
And there's so many now. There's so many, Darth Vader helped the Emperor hunt down and exterminate the Jedi Knights. Except for Grogu, except for Cal Kestis and the Jedi Fallen Order, except for, this and that and Ahsoka and the other, all these other Ezra. Yeah, like we have all of these Jedi.
And I think that takes away from you because Darth Vader is supposed to be a like epic badass. Like he's like an impossible to defeat character. And then all that stuff does is put like an incompetence level on that story arc of where he is, right?
And obviously it's a big universe. It's a big galaxy.
Sure.
And we can't say that Darth Vader killed every single Jedi in existence. It's fair to say that there's people out there. But, I think Cal's story is going to end in like an epic, sacrifice or whatever. In Jedi 3, whenever they come out with that. But it's just like that idea of there's so many of these other former potential Jedi running around that it robs the original trilogy of some of its emotional weight.
Okay, that's a better way to put it than what I was saying. Well, all right. So Star Wars, man, we're both your way. I appreciate your input.
Yeah,
because it's not very often you get to talk about Star Wars in a manner that's like that.
Well, and one last thing I'll mention before you segue off of it is that the other big problem with getting back to the sequels again is that with the idea of the concentric circles of how everything connects to the next thing and the next thing, and they all kind of build on each other, is that the sequels did not build on the foundation of the story left at the end of Return of the Jedi. All of this stuff happens off screen that makes the victory at the end of the Return of the Jedi all for nothing. And that's a betrayal of, not just betrayal of the characters, but a betrayal of the very structure of myth, of fantasy. It's like these characters, you have to, if you're doing a sequential story, you have to start at the equilibrium that you left off with. And then the character failures have to be earned. And they have to be earned by not reverting to problems they previously solved. Like in real life, we do that. we return to stuff. Oh, that's a bad habit. I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. Well, I'm back to it. You're right. We kind of revert to our personal struggles. We don't level up. We don't overcome the one thing. And now we move on to new things. We'd like to. That's what a mythic story inspires us to do, is to be better than we were. And so it's like Han Solo reverts to what he knew. Luke Skywalker goes, we see him in the Return of the Jedi. He's hacking away at Vader until, Vader surrenders. He hears the Emperor laughing. He stops. He's like, looks at his hand, throws away the lightsaber, says, that's not me. But it is him. We kind of go back to, he instinctively turned on his lightsaber. Again, he tried to kill his nephew. He didn't try to kill his nephew. He was into Kylo Ren's head, and he was afraid, and he ignited his lightsaber. Okay. But the Luke we saw at the end of Return of the Jedi doesn't go in there with his lightsaber, So it's like you didn't just betray Luke. You sort of betrayed storytelling. Because you didn't even try. You didn't even try to go, here's where we ended up.
There you go.
Here's how we get here. It's like the Empire's back, but it looks different. But it's the Empire.
Yeah.
The mask and the breathing and the lightsaber, it's back. It's like, why? How? How did we get here from there? I thought we won, so anyway.
So I think that, I think this all goes to, though, how you approach the Star Wars stuff, though, I think comes out in your book.
Okay.
Because I think you start off.
We're talking about First Blade.
First Blade.
By Jim Perry.
I mean, because you establish a protagonist like immediately. I know that was a little loud, but you do. The First Blade himself is you snatch that right off the bat, and it's like, now granted, I'm only like 4 or 5 chapters in, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's right off the bat. You go, it's not hard to follow where your attention is supposed to be, who you're paying attention to, and you follow that this arc that he's going to go to or something, right? And I think that it lends credit. Okay, all I'm saying is it lends credibility to what you're saying about Star Wars. And I will say, though, and this is an aside, like, I don't find movies very much compelling. It's really rare anymore when you get like a really good movie, but there's still, books are still there, though.
Yeah. I
read a lot, and it's primarily what I do, right? It's just read. And I find a lot of, and so why I bring this up is because, I'm frankly really glad that this came about, because it forced your book to come back up to the top of my reading list so I could give it start going it. But yeah. So tell me about like there's a couple things in it already that I'm like just over the moon with. Like, for one, you have cigars and you have pipes and, and you have a Sir Reginald in there. So like,
right, yeah.
I'm like, I'm all in, bro. Like,
yep.
I'm all in, man. But
and he's bald too. So let me just say,
But so, I mean, cause I'm not a fan of the Shiro. I just don't,
of the what?
Of the Shiro.
Okay.
A female hero character that is run rampant now with, seems like everybody takes like even Matlock and says, hey, that's a girl now.
She didn't like Red Sonja?
No.
Oh, okay. No. Well.
I mean, I like looking at her, but that was that was it, But I mean, it's not that I don't think it's good. It's like it can't be good. It's just I want to watch or read something where I'm compelled to identify and like do that. I can't do that with a female like that kind of thing.
Well, that's why the heroine's journey is a different thing from the male-centered hero's journey. So if you give a female a hero's journey arc, doesn't work the same.
Well, okay, Rebel Moon. There you go. Right? Again, well-made movies, like visually looks cool.
Well, and the problems with Rebel Moon have nothing to do with the fact that it's a female protagonist.
Nothing.
I mean, it's just awful.
It's just stupid.
Yeah.
But
it's terribly written.
It is. But you watch it. I watched it going, well, at least it looks, it's like, at least it's visually appealing. At least the effects look something. But, but I'm not going to ever watch it again. You know what I mean? It's like ever.
There's nothing. Every character is a paper thin.
Yeah.
And it's like, who are all these people? What are we trying to do here?
And they all die off. It's like, okay, so you just built up all these people and then everything else, and they just all die. And it's like, okay, this is.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Zack Snyder's Star Wars. It's like,
no,
he didn't learn anything from Star Wars.
No. Now, Zack Snyder's Justice League cut, I thought was pretty cool, except it was way better than the original Justice League movie, but
for sure.
Oh, I'm getting way off the freaking track here.
Well, in Batman versus Superman, his cut was better.
Well, way better, yeah. And the way he portrayed the guy in the Justice League, Steppenwolf, right?
Sure.
Or what was it? I can't remember his name.
I think that's.
Was that his name? Was so much visually better than the way they did. Anyway, so getting back to this, but tell me, like, so first off, how was your process when even coming up with the blade wielders and first blade, that kind of stuff? Like, where did you start? Is this like an idea you had like a long time ago?
It started. I
know I'm hitting a nerve now.
No. The genesis of the idea started in college.
Okay.
And, at the advent of the internet and chat rooms, First Night came out, 1995. And then Richard Gere, Sean Connery, King Arthur, And in the internet chat rooms, it was the Net Central internet chat rooms, and they had the Red Dragon Inn, which was like a role play thing, like you dive in and you're doing D&D with people, right? You're just role playing your character, and you sort of role play off each other, and it was this really cool narrative experiment where you're cooperating to sort of tell a story with other people. And there was another one, the OneRing.net, their original forums, another really great narrative experiment there, and you got a lot of practice writing your characters, establishing a scene. It was just fun for fun, but it's really good exercise. And the character I came up with was just this name that popped in my head, Madigan Wolf. And my daughter's name is Madigan, my youngest daughter's name is Madigan. That's where the name comes from. But this idea of this lone warrior on horseback returning exhausted from a distant battlefield, crests the rise into his home kingdom and finds that disaster has struck and people are missing, and this, and it was just this idea, and that may or may not be a function of the story I'm telling. I don't know that it is, but I'm not, again, it's not a spoiler alert. I'm just not like, this is what I'm doing. Well, it was just this idea of this character, and well, how did he get there? What war did he fight in? What caused his nation to fall apart? And so that was sort of the impetus. And that character just kind of stuck in the back of my head. When the 13th Warrior came out, Antonio Banderas,
Loved that movie.
I love that movie. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch, but it's so much fun to watch.
It is, dude.
So well shot. The Goldsmith score is just epic. These big Swedes and Finns fighting with swords, and just so
crazy,
good.
Dude.
So good. And the whole fish out of water concept. And so it sort of built off of that. And so as I was having this idea, I was sketching out the idea of this story. Well, I wanted to get to the point of the guy at cresting the hill and finding his nation destroyed. And I sort of worked backwards. Well, how do I get here? How do I do the prequel to this? And so I established this character, Arius, and sort of just kind of did a thought experiment, sort of sketched out a bio, and here's what he does, and he does this, and then this character comes in and does, oh, I better write about that character. So I go over here, it's Victor. I go, okay, Victor, what does he do? Where does he come from? Here's his description. Here's where he comes from. Here's what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
Oh, and that brings up another idea. And it all kind of grew like a natural brainstorm and sort of coalesced into an outline. And that outline kind of became the book First Blade. And in the interim, I had other writing projects that I worked on. I had 2 novellas published for the Decipher's Wars card game property that we did. I think it was 08 and 09, I think, when I wrote those. And those were published, by a small press. And those are out there. There's 2 books that have 3 novellas each in them. And, so I've had other things that I've written in the interim. So it's not like the first thing that I ever published. I think it's probably the first thing I, independent published, but.
Well, that's what it was so good. I mean, it's, when I saw, first off, I was immensely proud of you, by the way, when you said that, right? And it was like, and it was immediately, it wasn't even a question. I went to Amazon, I freaking bought it. It was like nothing. There was like, nope, I got to have it. Right. But I'm telling you, man, like the way you're okay. Here's a nitpick thing that I have with books, especially when we talk about, you're really trying to develop a story, you're really going to, if someone decides that they're going to give you every last specification and minute detail of somebody's belt buckle or something, it just loses track of the story. Cause you get,
Robert Jordan was real good at that. Wheel of Time. Yeah.
I mean, there's not even that though. Like even like Tom Clancy and like stuff like that. He'll just get in the weeds about like how the engine was developed on this submarine and stuff. And you're just like, bro, this doesn't matter at all to anything.
Some of that is I put so much time and research into this that dang it, I'm putting this in the book.
I know. I mean, and I get that.
Somebody else is going to have to listen to this.
But I understand that. But like,
there's people that get off on that too. They love that stuff.
I know, dude. But I'm not one of those.
Right.
Like, I want to know details. Don't get me wrong. I like details. But when it goes a whole chapter or something with, okay, I'm skipping.
You're running out of narrative momentum.
Yeah, I'm now running through the book way faster because I'm trying to get through it. You know what I mean? But so far, I will say that it's a really good balance between not too much and not enough either. Like it's like, when you talk about cresting the hills and stuff, so in other words, it's not difficult for me to have to like try to imagine the story. It's so far it's been pretty easy to like just read however I want, if that's fast or slow, whichever the day may bring me. But I don't have to. You put enough in there where I can see it. I can be in it without having to think about it too much. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think that's the trick with some of this stuff too.
Yeah, and it's a skill. It's an author's skill to learn. Okay, what are the details that stand out the most that will set the image in the reader's mind, and then the imagination sort of takes off. Yeah, you sort of, the readers have read enough books and seen enough movies, and they kind of know what a medieval village looks like. But you sort of like, is it stonemasonry? Is it thatched roofs? Is it, what is it? Yeah. Give a kind of a flavor, and then the reader runs with it. You don't have to spell out every single thing. And like just enough to give the reader a flavor for what you're looking for. Are you really, is the weather the thing that's the most interesting? Is it the horse that's the most interesting? Is it the town that's the most interesting? And just sort of establish a little sensory information, sound, smell, especially, because we associate those with emotion. Yeah. And then the reader's imagination will take care of the rest.
So like when you
just learning how to dole that out at a reasonable level.
Yeah. Well, so I guess that's where what you just said though, it's more like try to find a focal point that you want them to make sure is grounded. And from there, that one detail's cool. Maybe this detail's cool. Then let the imagination fill in the rest of the space. Right. Which is, I never thought about it that way, to be honest. I just, cause it's like, if you think about how you're reading a book and you get all this data inputted into your mind about like what the scene looks like. Well, every reader is going to be different anyway, from what they've read, what they like, what's their natural character. All that scene's going to pull. So I guess that makes sense where you would say, okay, well, they're going to formulate their own opinion about how this medieval village looks like. But if they know it's a cobblestone road, if they know it's made up, there's mainly thatched roofs, like you said, or whatever, then they fill in the rest of it just how they want to. But when you get into like, it's a cobblestone with one grade.
You don't want to insist that the readers see things exactly the way you envision them.
Yes.
Because the reader's going to resist that, right? They don't want to be dragged along on a leash. They want to explore. They want to have fun. They want to play, it's kind of, movie making sort of works in the same way. We use a matte painting to sort of convey the idea of depth. We use force perspective, like Gandalf and Frodo. You know, the way Ian McKellen and Elijah Wood sit and the way the camera focuses that lens is where you think this guy's bigger, but he's really just closer.
Yeah.
Or in Attack of the Clones, when they're chasing the bounty hunter through the streets of Coruscant, and we're close up on Anakin, and he's running, and you see him running past people. He's literally running in a circle with the extras walking around him. And it's like, it gives the idea that he's running straight line down the street. So it's kind of like you're sort of presenting what you want the reader to see, but then they fill in the rest.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool, man. So I'm looking forward to read that one. What's the plan for like, is it going to be like a saga or something like that you plan on doing, or what's the goal?
Well, now you're getting into a therapy session.
I'm sorry, man.
Because I don't know. What I did was, and I wrote about this on my Substack at indianajim.substack.com, where I write about storytelling. Bing, yeah. Where I fast forwarded 10, 15 years, where Nicholas was now a young adult instead of the 10-year-old boy you meet in the book in First Blade. I don't know if you've met him yet.
Yes, because is he the prince?
No,
not the prince.
He's the tailor's kid.
Oh, the tailor's kid.
Yeah.
Yes, and he's the one who wants to be. Well, where I'm at, he wants to be a blade wielder. Arius. Well, I don't want to talk too much.
No, that's fine. Anyway, I fast forwarded. I wrote 92,000 words, like a full novel practically, before I realized I'm writing the wrong book. Because not enough had happened. And I fell into the trap of all of this stuff is supposed to happen off screen, to where we encounter a completely different sort of social environment. But I hadn't done enough of the groundwork to really make it make sense.
I got you.
This is way too far in advance. The villains that you meet in the first book, way too much time has passed for them not to have done jack diddly squat by this point, right? So it's like, I really wanted to get into Nicholas as a young adult, but it wasn't the right time for that story. So I backed up a little more and started working on, and it was like, this still isn't working right. And I backed up a little more, like 3 years in advance, and wrote, a couple intro chapters, and like, this still isn't where I want it. So now where I'm at is the next book picks up immediately at the end of First Blade. So like, the last scene that you see in the book is like the first scene we see in the beginning, or the beginning of the second book. Not like I'm not rehashing it, but we're like, as soon as that cuts off, fade to black, we're fade back in. Like and I was like, this is where the story needs to go. We need to see what happens next here. And so now I'm like, is this how it's going to be? I'm going to be writing these books like tail off each other like this. Like, so I'm thinking, what will probably, I don't know. I really don't know. I really couldn't tell you.
No, it's okay, man.
I feel like the stuff that I've established in my head of where I tried to write this, but it didn't work, and this didn't work, but this didn't work, but this did. I'm still not entirely convinced this does work. But I'm pretty sure the next book after this one will be another year, 2, 3 years later, 5 years later. I don't know. I need to really get into this next book and get the villain going and figuring out his plot and how he does the things that he's doing. So I'm really struggling right now with the motivation to get the words down, because there's so many other things that I want to do. And I vacillate between, I put like a lot of energy into my YouTube essays, and then it's just like, I want to do something else, and so it's kind of rough. I spend a lot of time at work now where I can listen to books and podcasts and stuff, and I've listened to a lot of books on story, and I listen to novels, and I listen to podcasts, and I listen, so I'm able to fill up my sort of my creative tank and my thinking tank, but it's like my discipline tank is completely shot.
Well, I can't say anything. I mean,
and it's also like, am I sold out on being an author? Is that what I want to do? Or is this something fun? Like, because as soon as I make it a job, I don't want to do it anymore. And it's like, how do I get to the point where like, I can accept that this is what I'm really good at and I need to do this and keep it engaging and keep it fun,
So for me, and part of what's still delaying any authorship I might do is because I'm still burnt from doing 6 years of theology, of academic writing. Now, not that it's hard. I mean, like, and you might agree. I talk to a lot of people and they don't agree with me, but I'm like, to write a 2,500 word research paper on a topic is not hard.
The only hard part is figuring out which little bit of your brain you want to put on there.
Yeah,
it's like you've got so much.
Because academia is about, well, at least at the bachelor's level anyway, it's not about your opinion at all. You're really just saying, this is this, all sourced, peer reviewed, blah blah blah, and then you may have a conclusion you draw from the research you did.
Supporting argument.
Yeah, but so once you've established, though, like whatever topic it is, I wrote a paper on a part of Mere Christianity. I took some of that and I broke it all down into but even that, you're like you are sitting there and you're just trying to regurgitate Lewis in a different way, but you're not really being original. Like They don't want you to be original at that point, right? It only gets up to where you get in your master's or in doctorate work where you have to actually start creating your own.
And you can differentiate with style, but it's. I agree with you. Like that was the most fun part of finishing my bachelor's, which I graduated in 23, was the writing portion.
Everything that I did was because
it helped that it was mostly humanities and stuff that I wanted to talk about. I did a paper on George Lucas that was like mini version of the biography on George Lucas. It was like, I have to cut this down. I've put way too much in this.
Well, I did that a lot. Like, because theologically there was many aspects of because I did apologetics, right? So it was like, there was a lot, dude, that I was like into anyway. And so somebody says, hey, write a paper about this. I'm excited about doing it, And so I would just go research the living crap out of it. And then by the end of it, I'm like, I wrote one. It was literally 4,500 words. I'd done it in it was literally like 4 hours. And because I just went, and I just like, here. And then I'm like, crap, I got half of it I had to lose. And it's like, come on, man. That's the kind of stuff that bothered me a lot with where I was at. But it was my English 1.0, not 1.0, I don't remember what it was. My English classes, though, where you'd think would be the easiest ones, were the most difficult ones. The literature classes were the most difficult ones, even though I liked it. Yeah. But they had way more restrictions, or I should say more stricter grading on what they expected out of you for the writing you did. Mm-hmm. So, like, I remember I had to do like I had to read, they had a couple different offers with the poetic writing you had to go through, and you had to research and write about it and what it meant and all this kind of stuff. Right. And so, I'm not a poetry guy at all, but it did made me think differently, and I think that's what I really appreciate about some of that stuff. And then,
I found out that I really like Flannery O'Connor. Like that was interesting, doing some of the reading, the stuff that I'd never read before. And I was like, the Southern Gothic stuff, like this stuff's really cool. Like I like this stuff.
I like Chaucer, dude. Who would have thought, right? I mean, Chaucer's like, but the way he wrote things was just so, it's that kind of Middle English,
You don't realize how funny he's being either until you really learn how to read it.
Yeah, it takes you a while, but like once it clicks, it's like, oh, this is brilliant.
It's kind of like Shakespeare that way.
A little bit, yeah. Shakespeare's just overdone, man. That's my thing.
No,
it's
true.
It's like,
but when you realize what he's doing,
it's way more. Way more
how satirical like it is, and how like direct to things he was talking about. Like,
so let me ask you this, man. As far as like your storytelling goes, right? And how much does like your Christian views, does that really impact much of your storytelling that you're doing? Are you Do you think that at all? Except it's like, does that help you define morality into, I don't know, anything like that as far as your storytelling goes? Does that?
Yeah. Because, I mean, my worldview is my worldview. And the things that I think are good, I'm going to quote First Night, Sean Connery speaking to Lancelot, he was talking to the bad guy. And he's like, the bad guy's like, oh, Arthur and his great Camelot and how wonderful he is and yada, yada, yada. And he's like, either the stuff that we believe is to be good and right and true is good and right and true for all mankind under God, or we're just another robber tripe, right? He's like, either this stuff is true or we're just fooling everybody. And so it's like, I believe in nobility, heroism, sacrifice, doing the right thing because it's the right thing, even if it's hard to do. And so Arius sort of is that guy. It's like he believes in the cause, he believes in his country and what it stands for and what his purpose is. And by the same token, the guy who's ostensibly the villain in the first book, Victor, he doesn't necessarily have that moral compass. And he's not looking to do bad things, but he gets stuck in a spot where it's like, to save his own skin, he makes calculations that lead him into a spot. So it's like, there's, in the sense that, it's easy to go like Emperor Palpatine just wants to be evil because he's evil. It's just like, there's no real motivation there. Like he's seeking power for power's sake. That's not really that interesting. Anakin is interesting because he falls to the dark side because he wants to do something that he believes is right, but it's in the end, it's selfish. It's for himself. He cares about Padme, but only as far as he wants to keep her. He wants to possess her. Like he lost his mother, he can't lose her, So it's like he's way more interesting as a villain because of why he falls there. So, I believe that the Bible is the greatest source on human nature, why humans behave the way they do. And I think it's our motivations may be complex, but the source of our problems is simple. And that's gratifying the flesh. That's the sinful nature. And it's that spirit of rebellion, And so I believe that my purpose when in writing fiction is that my good guys may have some gray areas, but in the end, I believe in the themes of heroism and sacrifice and doing the right thing by people. And so, I think a lot of what we call Christian fiction, Christian movies, it's like structured in a way that we want an altar call at the end. And it's like, it's not how stories work. It's like my motivation is to give a glimpse of a picture of what is good and right and true. Think on these things, these things that are good and right and true. I forget the verse. It's like my brain's just all over the place.
It's all right, man.
You know what I mean?
I do.
You know which verse I'm talking about.
I got it.
Whatsoever is good, whatsoever is trustworthy, think on these things. And so the themes of doing the right thing, even if it's hard and even if you fail and not everybody's perfect, but just kind of really speaking to those themes,
Well, let me. So one. I want to get in I want to touch on gaming a little bit because I do enjoy gaming. It's what I do at night when the kids go to bed and stuff. I mean, that's what I do to kind of help my brain shut down, or at least just engage in something other than this and not that way. So I know you said you played Call of Duty a little bit, which I did a little bit of Call of Duty kind of stuff.
Who hasn't?
Yeah. But I never played the Battlefield or Battlefront games. I've played Destiny 2 was the game I was playing pretty much a lot until, I don't know, till December of last year. Then it's been all Warframe. And what I've been into is just Warframe. But I like shooters, you know?
Yeah.
So how, what, for one thing, are you a console? You're a gaming guy? You're a board game guy? What kind of gaming guy are you, for one?
Well, I was console gaming for forever, until my brother-in-law happened to give me like a laptop that he wasn't in, big old MSI Titan laptop. I mean, this is a big monster, and 2 GT 1080s in it, and you know, and it's like as soon as I got on there and started getting on like Steam and stuff, and started playing games at like 144 hertz, to totally 120, it was like, why would I go back to 30? Like, what? Why would I lose 75% of the frames that I've got? And it's like, when you move from console on a TV to PC and a monitor and stuff, it's like, oh, well, I got to get the 165 hertz monitor. You know, it's like, and I'm paying right now, making payments to my brother-in-law on another computer with a 30, it's got 3060 in it and like a much better processor. But anyway, so I was console for the longest time. And it was like my first console that I bought with my own money was in college. It was the PlayStation 1. But now I'm like, I'm like you. I like shooters as well. Growing up, I played a lot of Madden, NBA, you know, when I was really more into those sports and stuff.
Got you.
And then I got into shooters with SOCOM. And SOCOM was really cool because it was totally different. It was like, oh, you can give commands to your guys, you know, and positioning them and using the strategy in the campaign modes. And then when it came to online game, it's like, got into Star Wars Battlefront because it was Star Wars and it was a shooter and you could play online. And SOCOM was one of the earliest console games you could play online. And then Halo came after that and sort of started that whole. Yeah. And so I really gravitated toward milsim, toward tactical, you know, shooter gameplay, which Call of Duty is not really, you know. And of course I played the Call of Duties, the campaigns. I played the Medal of Honor campaign, you know, way back when. But as we got into online shooters, as the SOCOM franchise sort of just died off, there was Call of Duty, but it was like, but we didn't really like it that much. When Battlefield came out, it was way more realistic. The Frostbite engine, the destructibility, it felt more immersive. And so I really felt like I really liked that because I really valued the sacrifice that our military makes and sort of getting that vibe, you know, just kind of paying tribute to that almost in a way. But then, you know, I don't know if I'm falling far afield from the question. Well, but I play mostly shooters and you know.
So like my thing with, okay, so one thing that I think it's different though gaming when you're our age than it is because you run across, since we're all really online anymore, you know, you're playing against a lot of young guys primarily. There's some females out there, but primarily it's statistics show you. But although there is more females coming into it, to be honest, but and you know what, what I find a little bit. What I did find, I should say, when I got into PC gaming, which has been a while now, but like, is the level of like just unrestrained nastiness that is just that'll catch you off guard if you've never played in an online type of thing. Yeah, and all of a sudden you're into like a Warzone lobby. Holy cow, bro! It's just. You're just like, who
it's so stupid.
Who raised you, man?
Right.
This is crazy, you know?
Yeah. Well, and there's the whole concept of like, I forget, it's not disassociation, but it's like this idea that we sort of get separated from who we are and sort of, I don't know. There's a psychological concept. I can't remember what it's called.
Well, disassociation is you're kind of disassociating your reality, your real life to the video game life, and it has no consequences in your made up realm that you.
There's that, but there's also another concept of where we sort of kind of like revert to the mean, where we become a part of the group, and if the group does this, then we sort of behave this way. Yeah, you know, which kind of explains a little bit why we behave differently with that anonymity than we would otherwise. But like, you bring that up when SOCOM was the top of the genre. You would get in a lobby, and your pre-round lobby, everybody could talk to each other. You could switch teams. You could balance that lobby yourself. If somebody was being toxic, you could vote them out and say, if you're going to be like that, we're not playing with you. You're gone. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was self-policing, and it's not that way anymore. And I think a lot of that is because, and you would get a bunch of people maybe in a clan together, and they would organize that lobby and then police it. If you had guys team killing, you just vote them out. Somebody call a vote, and you just vote them out, and they'd be kicked from that lobby. That idea of self-policing is completely gone. It's like I play Apex a lot, and I've gone through spells where I've gotten out of it and playing it again because it feels good again. They've made some changes that made it a little better, but
Are you controller or keyboard mouse?
yes,
I don't do keyboard.
depends
mouse.
on the game.
No, I can't do keyboard mouse, bro.
I can do either.
I'm stuck, man. I'm stuck on my controller.
I mean, Apex, I play controller because the aim assist just works so much better with the controller. Your close up combat is so hard with a mouse. But other games, I'll play mouse and keyboard and do just fine. It's like if your interactions are close quarters, controller is better. If you're doing a lot of sniping, mouse and keyboard is better.
By far, but I still can't do it.
Anyway, I can do both, but I'm ambidextrous that way. So I mute, I mute my squad immediately because everybody's got an opinion on what you should be doing with your player. And there's so many people that play that game so stupidly. Like in a battle royale, they'll just, oh, we're going to dive bomb on this location right here, even though there's 3 other squads landing there. Well, I know I can't, I'm going to die if I land there. So it's like, I won't land there with you. If you want to be suicidal, basically, if you want to be stupid with your gameplay. And it's like, and of course you want to be able to communicate with people, but then, like you say, they're so toxic. It's like, as soon as you do something they disagree with, it's cuss you out time. Let's not have a discussion. Let's just blah. So if you're like playing with friends, if you got buddies, it's great. But if you're trying to meet new people, it's not as good anymore.
Well, so I played the one Call of Duty that I really got into was DMZ when they had it was like the extraction shooter. Yeah. Loved that, dude.
Tarkov Light.
Yeah, because
did you ever get into Tarkov? Did you ever try that?
Man, I haven't tried it because everybody warned me off of it.
It's so stressful.
Oh yeah, they said it was really. But anyway, but the DMZ thing was, I was wicked into that, right? I mean, because I do like PvP, but I don't want to always necessarily do PvP. But it's fun. Like it adds an element of like risk that you want to take, right? Mm-hmm. And that was really one. And I finally got there was a streamer named what's his name now? Because I don't even watch him anymore because he. Anyway, there was a streamer I was watching DMZ content that he would have while I was working. I'd put that on and watch it a little bit. He had a Discord server.
Wasn't Stone Mountain 64?
Well, I do remember Stone Mountain, but he was cool too. Fixate. That's what it was. So Fixate, and because Fixate was like a real laid back guy, and I'm like, okay, if his Discord's hopefully laid back too. Dude, it was, man. You just go in there and you jump in a room and a couple dudes, and it was like you just go around and play it. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of fun. But you'd constantly run into these other teams, man. They would just be toxic as all get out, right? But anyway, so I guess what was I going with? There's a real, and I don't know how you see this either, but a grown ass man can go use video games as an escape, mm-hmm. And I think for me, I never feel like I'm escaping. And I think once I don't know if you would, right? Mm-hmm. So what is your thoughts on a gaming / work family balance that might?
No, we can totally have another therapy session, mostly for me, right? My wife was a card carrying SOCOM widow, for real. Now it's I didn't skip work to play, right? I didn't. It was kind of well, would you rather me here playing video games or out with the boys, you know, drinking at the bar or whatever, you know, it's like of the hobbies that I could pick, you know, which one do you like? So like there's pictures of me holding the baby with the bottle with a controller in my hand, just because she's just eating the bottle. I might as well do something. Right. So but like I spent way too much time out of balance. Part of that has to do with my own psychology and sort of the addictive sense of it.
I got you.
Where it's like it's not just the dopamine, but it's I was never accomplishment driven much. And I spent a lot of time as a child being bullied and not believing I was good enough. And so it's like, I felt so down on myself for my lack of accomplishment that getting into SOCOM and really tearing it up and getting the MVP of the round was like
the big time.
That was the drug, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it was like, and it was also back then. It was a good time with the boys. Like you run into people, you meet them online. Like there was a clan I was a part of that really good, like mature adult men like myself who had family obligations. We would talk about life and also play SOCOM. And it was just this casual good time. Now everybody wants to be a pro streamer. Like everybody's got a TTV in their name, and they're streaming to two people, and they think they're God's gift in video games. It's just like, you're not Dr. Disrespect.
Well,
you're not. What's his name? You're not Scump, right? You're not on Optic. You're not a pro gamer. So it's just like, I struggled big time with that balance that you're talking about. And, you know, I'm glad I had 3 kids that could entertain each other because it sort of gave me an out a little bit to not entertain them as much. And I feel like it's one of those things where I wish my head had been clearer when they were little.
It's tough, dude. I mean, because like,
that's not to say I didn't do stuff with them, but it's like there were so many more opportunities where I could have taken them to the park to go play, and I didn't because I was more stuck in my own head and gratifying the flesh in my, in that way.
Well, I mean, I'm a really competitive person. Like it's like I have a competitive drive. I got to win.
One of the things I enjoyed about it was the competition aspect,
And I learned a lot from when I first came into PC gaming and started playing PvP stuff, whether it be on Destiny or the Call of Duty stuff or whatever, to like, it didn't take long for me to learn that I got to back off. I'm getting.
So that competitive aspect really ate you up.
It was, dude, if I wasn't winning, I was like, I was mad. Right.
Yeah.
And it took a conscious effort for me. Cause I would even like say like the girls are going to bed. I need to put them to bed. Well, no, I'm going to win this match first.
Right. Yep.
Well, no, that's not my, it really took an effort to like really train myself to like, no, this is a game.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't,
And I really run into that with Battle Royale because it's like, we're like the last 3 groups, like the match is almost over, It helps that I'm 48 now and my kids don't really need me and my wife's doing her stuff. And, but it's like when my wife's coming home from the store and bringing groceries in, you're really riding that line.
Yeah. Well, so that's what I'm talking about, man. It's like, you really got to, you got to be introspective about your manliness at some point. You know what I mean? And this applies to biblical manhood or secular manhood. I mean, you really got to do some soul searching every once in a while to go, what am I doing? And gaming, I think, is one of those things that's easy because it's not illegal. It's not a drug. It's not this. It's something you're doing. And it could easily turn into one of those things where it's distracting you from what's really important.
Yeah.
And I think we all got to sit there and go, if we like games and stuff, it's like, okay, let me back this train.
Yeah, I run into that a lot now. It's just like, okay, I've just spent 2 hours. I've accomplished nothing. Did I have fun? Sure. It's probably time to quit, and it's much easier now to quit because I guess they don't have the same appeal that they used to. Part of that is I'm getting older. I can still hang with the kids, like no problem. Don't worry about that. But,
but you
it's
mentioned
like at a certain point, it's like it doesn't mean as much.
But the money that these gaming studios are putting into these games is far greater than the movie studios now. Yeah, like you're talking like big AAA titles are now putting in hundreds of millions of dollars to make these games, and they're making it and huge profits off of these things.
Yeah.
So
they're engineered in such a way to keep you going for that next hit.
We could talk all day about microtransactions and everything else, but particularly with you though, Jim, going back to the storytelling though, some of these games though have epic storylines that are just killer, just on their own right? Yeah. My favorite, probably one of my favorite games of all time, Red Dead Redemption 2, both of those. The story is like you're just drawn into the story. You're just trying to see what happens to the character and all this stuff because it's so much more compelling than what you're seeing at the box office anymore. Yeah. Right? And I think you're going to see a lot more going into that as well.
And I've had a lot of times where I've stayed up way too late because the story is just so good. Like you got to see what happens next.
Yeah.
It's like a book you can't put down.
Yes, exactly. And so I wonder, like, they're already like, you already see big name people going over to the gaming industry and doing voices and all this kind of other stuff and everything else. I don't know. I wonder how far away are we really from saying movies are kind of video games are really where it's at. You know what I mean?
Well, and even the reverse, you see Neil Druckmann going from Naughty Dog, they do The Last of Us and everything, and it's so good. Like he's like becomes a showrunner for The Last of Us TV show.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? But anyway, so Warframe is cool, man. I don't know if you would get into that or not, but
I tried it once, but I don't dig the aesthetic.
Yeah, but it's different. But it's so complex, man, because it's like the game's been around for 12 years. They've taken very, very, very little out of the game. So like if you come into it brand new, you have no idea.
Right.
But once you stick it out a little bit and then it becomes more, then you got more and more and more and more and more. So it's been cool. I don't know if it's going to be one of those games I keep playing into the extent that I am, but it's hard for me to find a game I like that much though. Destiny for a long time was, because it was like, there was always something new. There was a new thing, there was this, and then it got so repetitive. And Bungie has just been wrecking the bed, dude.
Yeah, no, we found out that Activision wasn't the problem.
No.
They weren't the greedy ones. Like Bungie is so much greedier than Activision ever was.
It's just these decisions they made about all kinds of stuff and taking this out and doing this and the whole sunsetting thing and then reversing this.
Well, and the sunsetting made sense to me because there's so much content. It's like we can't possibly have this content stay in this game or it's going to be 300 gigs. It's just like, and I got that, but I also understand that sucks. Like, I can't use the Ace of Spades that reminds me of Cade and reminds me of Nathan Fillion, which reminds me of Firefly and why Firefly got canceled, and it's so sad, and I love that gun. And I can't use it because it's sunsetting.
Yeah, I mean, like, dude, anyway, but that whole thing, I spent 10 years playing Destiny, right? Yeah. I mean, really.
I played a lot too.
That was a freaking decade, right? I think 6,000 hours on that freaking game or something like that, right? And that's just on PC. That's not even counting the console.
And then the story just went.
It did, dude. And I mean, like, because it was like the mechanics of it were really cool. Like how the movement was actually okay. It was kind of, well, looking back on it, it was a little slow compared to some other things. Yeah. But the gunplay was always really cool. But I got tired of dealing with the nonsense.
And the level design was top notch. Like the environment art and everything. There's so much good. About that game. But
it's a shame, man. I mean,
the narrative kind of lost the plot there.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't even know what they're doing with it at the point. I haven't been paying attention in a long time. But that's another. They got that one game marathon coming out. They're trying to push real hard now, which is the extraction shooter, which looks interesting. Looks not interesting. Yeah, it's kind of hard to say.
Well, I can't figure out about extraction shooters because Tarkov's such a niche thing. Not everybody likes Tarkov. It's so hardcore, and I tried it a little bit, but like it's so stressful just because you could get one tapped by an AI sniper somewhere that you never saw, and it's just like, how's that fun? But and the idea of losing something, like I understand the appeal, I understand the draw. There's stakes there. You feel like that really, but everybody else is trying to do their version of Tarkov. It's like, let's take that element of it and make it a thing. And I think there's a lot of developers thinking about the blockchain And like, how can we put something that a token or a thing that you can actually own? And like Counter-Strike sort of does this, where you can buy and sell and trade cosmetics.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we make it something where you go into an extraction shooter and you can actually bring out something you get to own, like that's yours? And I understand the appeal of it. And I understand the draw, and I understand that, hey, we can, if we make it good enough, people will pay money for it. But everybody's trying to make their own extraction shooter, and they all end up kind of being this watered down version of something someone else has already cornered the market on. And every game now, and it's kind of like this way with the movie industry. Everything is kind of turning into the same thing, which is how can we make money off of this first? And not how can we tell a great story?
Yeah.
How can we make a great game? It's how do we monetize this? Yeah. How do we increase our shareholder value? How do we line go up with this?
I think Warframe does has a better philosophy behind how they're monetized things. It's free game.
Yeah.
So, and you can earn anything, almost anything in the game via gameplay. Now, you might have to farm your butt off.
They throttle it like super heavy.
But you can earn it's really, it's kind of cool like that.
Yeah.
So it makes me want to support the game. And I'm kind of impatient anyway. So like if they come out with a new frame or something like that, I'm usually like, I'm just going to buy it.
Yeah. Right.
But I mean, I don't feel bad about it, right?
Yeah.
With like games like Call of Duty and like Bungie's Destiny and stuff, you already paid a chunk of money for the freaking game or the season pass and all this crap. Yeah. And then you had all these other things on top of it. And it was like, you just felt like, well, what am I paying for? So I guess I'm kind of on the fence about the microtransaction thing versus, all this stuff. But if it's done well, I think you can make that a success, right? And I think Warframe's kind of proven it. It's still on the top, like one of the top play games on Steam.
Well, Call of Duty makes a ton of money from it. Apex makes a ton of money from it.
I've played Apex, by the way, and I don't mind Apex because I do like the first person shooter type of thing, and it's kind of cool. But maybe it's the aesthetic of that one that it just doesn't appeal to me. Maybe I don't know.
Well, they're talking about. There's rumors that they're going to Unreal instead of modified Source 2, which is Counter-Strike's engine, right? And so that may change the aesthetic a little bit, make it a little more real, give it a little more realism. But anyway,
I didn't even buy Black Ops 6. Or whatever. I didn't even do it. I played the one, they had a free weekend, and I liked the zombie mode in the old DMZ thing that they had where you could go in there and do the zombies with the whole thing. Loved that. Mm-hmm. That was awesome. It didn't have the PvP element, but you still went in and was like, you could do stuff. You went in there to do, that was actually pretty cool. Now I think that got a little old, but when they did the level-based zombies again, I'm just like, I don't really care. Mm-hmm. And I've never been the Call of Duty PvP, like, routine guy who wants to go into all those lobbies and do the shipment match for 3 hours and
grind your gun skins.
I just don't care.
Let me go for that gold camo.
But that's what everybody in Call of Duty does, But anyway,
stream to my 5 viewers.
Yeah, roll. I mean that's
all content.
That's all the time. I don't do any streaming.
Yeah,
I don't.
I have.
Well, I saw some in because you were doing that Battlefront stuff. So, I mean, you had to do some streaming, I imagine, as far as that goes. But I don't know. Honestly, one of the funnest games that I'll play is Farming Simulator. I love that freaking game. It's so laid back. You don't really.
And my jam is American Truck Simulator.
Well, there you go.
I love that thing.
It's just fun to play. But anyway, all right, Jim, look. I really appreciate you coming on, man. I think this has been okay. My SD card ran out at the end of that video, but thankfully it only cut off the last little bit. But what y'all need to do is check out Jim's Star Wars Survival Guide channel, his book, his Substack, where he writes prolifically about storytelling and all kinds of things on there, which all those will be in the description. So Jim's a good dude, and definitely he definitely can tell a story. I mean, I would definitely recommend picking, if you just like good stories, man, pick up his book. It's not, it's a good read so far. I'm like halfway through. So, definitely compelling with a great protagonist and stuff like that. So pick that up. So thanks, Jim, again for being on the R&B Talks show. We greatly appreciate it. As I'm recording this in my office, editing the interview, it is Friday the 11th. Brian is in surgery today, so hopefully he'll be back next week. Just be in prayer for Brian and his family for his swift and recovery for all that. We will. I'll be sure to catch up. Obviously, I'm going to catch up with Brian today and stuff to make sure everything's okay and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, again, thanks, Jim. Hopefully, we'll see you again with maybe have you on with me and Brian. And to all y'all, this is R&B Talks. I'm Reggie. See ya.